Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the release of Cave Engine 1.1. So this video is a different video. I'll be showcasing a bit of the engine in general, not only 1.0 features, and also explaining how you can use the engine and get started to learn how to take advantage of Cave Engine 1.1 to make your own video games. So make sure you are prepared, and of course, the engine is available right now for you to purchase on itch.io, or you can become a patron and I will be granting you access. If you become a patron, there's a known issue. For some reason, some new members are not being able to download it. So just enter the Discord. You will find a special channel for the patrons. So ping me over there and I will grant access to you manually if you have any problem with that. Okay? So anyways, this is the Cave Engine Project Manager. And if you don't know Cave is a 3D, easy to use, scriptable in Python game engine for you to make games for computer, Windows or Linux, and in the near future also for web and other platforms. But for now, it is available for you to create games using Linux or Windows and export to those platforms. And again, it's 3D and it's scriptable in Python. It was the engine itself was entirely written in C++, so it's super fast and super efficient, but you can script in Python if you want to. So I will open the Cave demo, which is the demo project, of course, that you have with the engine. There are instructions to download it in the itch.io page, and when you first open the demo project, we will find appearance like this, very similar to this. So this is an initial scene here, and let's go ahead and understand a little bit of how Cave Engine works. So of course, as you can immediately see, Cave Engine interface is split into multiple tabs. Each tab can be dragged around, so you can reorganize everything, you can put everything everywhere. Basically, you can undock the 3D view. You can even close a tab if you want to, and if you accidentally do this, you can of course go ahead here in the top left corner and go to the tabs and find it again and re-enable, and you'll be good to go. So this is how the tab system works. And the main tab, of course, is the 3D view, where you will be seeing your world. Everything that is 3D, it can be the scene or it can be an entity template. It will be shown in the 3D view. So to navigate around the 3D view is very simple. You just need to mouse over it and right click. You just need to right click and hold it, and it will open the free cam for you. It's like a first-person camera. You can walk around, and using W, A, S, and D, you can move. If you are too fast or too slow, just use the mouse scroll to go slower or faster. You can also use Q or I to move down and up, or if you prefer, you can just navigate using the WSD. SND, sorry. So this is how to navigate very easily. And if you left click something, it will select like an entity. And if you press F, it will focus on this entity. So this is very handy. If you're like far away and you want to focus, just press F and that's it. Very easy manipulation. You can also select the entities by going to the scene graph here and selecting each entity. And of course, you can drag and drop an entity to make a parent of another entity, or you can just right click and remove the parent. So parenting is supported in the engine, and it's a very important part of it. To move the entities around, you have gizmos here, and it's you can change the gizmos to the move, the rotate, and the scale gizmo here in the top left, or using the shortcuts W, I, or R. You can also change if you want global or local, and enable or toggle snapping. The snapping can also be toggled by holding Ctrl. So if you click here and move, and if you hold Ctrl, it will snap into place. Same for the rotation. Holding Ctrl to go 5x5, and same for the scaling. Very easy. And by the way, one very important tip here is that you can press mouse over a surface and press G to move the center of the selected object to the surface, just like I'm doing right now. And this is very nice because, for example, if I have an enemy like this one, I can of course very easily position it around the world by mouse overing and pressing G. If you want to duplicate an enemy, I can just press Shift D and it will duplicate the enemy, as you can see, or I can duplicate an entity by holding Alt and moving the row. And this is very handy when you are doing level design, for example, with blocks, because you can very quickly have multiple blocks like this. See? Very easy. To delete an object, just press delete. Very simple. And one shortcut also to duplicate is hold Alt and press G. It will create a copy and move this copy to the place that you are mouse overing. To add a new entity, just press Shift A, and you will see this new entity pop up. And you can pick a folder, an entity, a mesh, point light, a camera, UI element, whatever. By the way, all the entities here in Cave is just a name, a folder by default. What is a folder? Is an entity with no components attached to it. So Cave Engine is a entity component based engine. It's not ACS. It's very different because the components in Cave can have logic similar to Unity, for example. So it's not ACS. But if you have an empty, a completely empty entity, it is considered a folder. Of course, if you add a transform, it will be considered internally by the engine to be an empty. And I'm just saying this for you to get used to this naming conventions here. So a folder is completely empty. An empty is an empty entity with a transform. And by the way, the reason why it's named like that is just to reference Blender. So in Blender, if you know what is an empty in Blender, you know here as well. Cave Engine do have some references to Blender. And of course you have a mesh, which is an entity with a transform. So you have a position in the world, you can see here. A mesh and a static body for the physics. Very simple, very straight to the point. And of course I can delete everything. So this is how it works. And of course, you already know at this point, because you saw this happening, if I select something here in the 3D view, it will show the properties of it in the properties tab. And this is not only true by object, but for everything in Cave. For example, if I click in the background, you can see that the properties is now showing the scene settings. Of course, I can access this by clicking here. Click to edit the scene, or here also, another good thing. And it will show the settings here. And in the scene settings, for example, you can choose the ambient, the sky settings, for example, the sky intensity. It is using an HDR at the moment, so I can change the blur of it. I can even rotate the HDR to fit the sun. And talking about, I can, of course, toggle mist. I can change the sun settings and many other things. Also, I can write my own post-processing in Cave using GLSL, and I can also write my own shaders, including the main shader, which is very nice. I can override the main shader program here and have post-processing. For example, by default, this demo scene do have an ambient occlusion post-processing, anti-aliasing, and color correction. So I can tint the entire world or do some crazy stuff if I want to. So let's bump up the contrast, for example. Oh, by the way, when I have numbers like that, I can press Ctrl and click, and I will be able to manually type the number that I want. Or I can just click and drag. It will work. So yeah, this is the post-processing. They're all accessible here in the source code, and you can see it is a GLSL shader. You can write, if you don't like, you can write another one. That's it. You can create multiple filters and all that. And this is also the same for the material, the shader material also. The engine does have materials, of course. It does. For example, this is this ground material here. You can see there's the entity that composes this plane here. Do have a transform, do have a mesh. This is a mesh component. I can tint this mesh for you to see it a little bit better, and the mesh component takes a mesh and a material, which is a test material. It also have a static body for physics. So if I press play, it will have physics, of course. If I click here to select to edit the material, it will go to this material settings. I can have a custom shader written specifically for each material. If I don't have a custom shader, it will use the global one. Or the scene one. So the global one is accessible in the settings tab. by going to the rendering, and you can see here there's no main shader program, meaning that it will use the default engine shader. But if I have a main shader program for the entire game, I can set it here. Anyways, so it's good to have this, I'm just explaining because it's good to know that you can override the entire shaders of the engine, or just a specific scene, or just for a specific material, up to you, it's fine. And I can do all the adjustments here to control this, this shader, of course. I can click here to go back to the previous asset selected in the properties, and I can keep editing the ground if I want, do whatever I want with it. Anyways, let me go ahead and quickly show you a bit of the demos here that we have in the engine, because this is of course very important. In this demo scene, well there's two actually last panels that I want to show you, that last tabs. We have the asset browser here, so you can navigate and browse all the assets, all the folders and files that you have in the engine. You can see I have a material, and I have a mesh, I have a shader here for the grass, readme and all that. I have textures, so very easy, and this is, I believe it's a default thing. If you are used to using a computer, you probably know how this works. So yeah, this is the folder system. I have here the console. If I do something, for example, if I hit Ctrl S to save, you can see that the project was saved to disk. So I do have a message here. Very useful, of course. I also have here in the back the timeline. This is for making cutscenes and animations, but I'm not going to show you in this video. One thing that is very important is that in this demo project, we have documentation files. And by the way, yes, you can create your own documentation files. It supports Markdown, just right click, new asset, and then you have documentation. Very easy. But basically, if I click here, I do have in Portuguese the documentation and in English, so that's why you will find Leia-me, which is read me in Portuguese, and if you open this documentation, it will be in Portuguese. Who could have guessed, right? And you also have read me, which is the documentation in English. So this is the documentation explaining you how to navigate through the demo projects, and explaining you also how to use the engine itself. So we have exploration tips for you and all that. And by the way, it's good to know that this documentation, as I said, you can create your own. And if you create a new one, just go to settings here and you will be able to edit the markdown for this documentation. Very easy. I'll click here and go back. All right, so I'll go to demos here. And let me quickly show you all the demos that we have. I have the, let's go to the main menu, actually. If I go to menus, main menu, I will double click it. Of course, there's documentation. As you can see, this main menu demo even have language system, data saving, and a bunch of stuff that you can explore. So this is a scene, and if I click here F5 to play, or just press F5, it will play the game. And of course, I can manipulate here. I can change this to Portuguese, and it goes to Portuguese, and can go back to English, and it goes back to English. And of course, you can read the logic and see how this is implemented, and create your own versions of this. This is exactly the point of the demo, to showcase everything. I can click here to play the demos, and they do have a bunch of options. For example, the save load shows how to save stuff. So I have this number 7, I click save. And of course, if I change it to something else and click load, it will load back. Very simple, right? And I do have advanced demos, so I can, I have a 3D scene, I can move this object, I can click here to save the position, and then if I move to somewhere else, I can click load, and it will load the position. Of course, very simple, just to show you how saving works. And if I press F5 to quit the game, and if I click here, you will probably see here that I do have a player component. Very simple one, but in the GUI, I have a save and load button, and it does have some code here in the behavior when clicked out, meaning that you can see here there's a red code icon, meaning that this do have code in it. And if I click to expand, it will show you the script that that the engine is using to save this. So you can navigate, you can explore and understand everything. So those demos are made to be very simple for you to understand, to read, and all that. Anyways, so let's continue to more interesting demos. For example, I have the first person demo. So you can see a first person player here, it walks, go faster. I don't know if there's hearing, but there are footsteps. And of course, I can shoot. Of course, the sound is not very good. I'm not a perfect sound designer. I'm an engine developer. So you can change this demo and put good sounds if you want. But the idea here is that I wanted to show you the shooting mechanic, show you an idea on how to make a muzzle flash. So as you can see here, we do have muzzle and also bullet holes. Very easy. And all these demos do have a pause menu that you can explore, of course. Can go back to main menu and we can continue. I do have the third person demo, which is of course just a walking dude. The walks and runs, and there are some basic AI here for these red dudes that just wanders around for the moment. It is using state machine, which is a feature that Cave Engine have. It is a code-only state machine, so there's no visuals for that, but it's very easy, very fast to understand. And if you go ahead and explore these dudes here, I will show you in a moment where they are. You will be able to understand how everything works. So of course, I can walk, I can run, I can jump, I can punch. For this demo, I haven't implemented hitting yet, so there's no hitting, but it's easy enough to do it. And this gives you an idea on how everything works. And of course, I have the camera collision, so my camera does not collide with anything. And of course, you can see how it is implemented to implement in your own game. You can restart the game, continue, of course, very simple. Let's go back to the main menu and keep going. I do have the vehicle demo because Cave Engine does have bullet physics. And I'm a terrible driver. Let me just try to climb here. And of course, if you don't like how stiff or how not stiff everything looks like, you can change Cave Engine. The physics here is very customizable. The logic behind this is very customizable. So you are free to do a better job than I did in this demo. Yes. Okay. I'm very bad at this. But anyways, let's go to the particles demo. This is just to showcase some simple particles with transparency, particles appearing and rotating and dying. Very simple. I have other particles. For example, this is some grass and also some particles that are attached to this car. This is animated particles, which is very good, very handy if you want to simulate crowds. You can see here we do have this test character wandering around, and this is all particles. And you can bump up the number of characters to see how many particles animated, which is very hard, your computer can handle. And of course, you have explosions here, very simple explosions. This is the bullet hole, by the way, that the first person demo uses. So yeah. So this is pretty much the demo here. We do have many other stuff here also that you can explore. And in each demo here, at least most of them, you have a README. For example, for the vehicle demo, you have the script here. If I double click it, I will be able to edit the script. Very easy. And of course, I have the README. Not to talk about, of course, the scene here to explore and understand everything. So in the README, you will understand exactly what is all the parts, how to make more realistic controls and all that. So there's an explanation for the car sound, suggestions for you to do different and better. So the documentation is here. You can go ahead and explore as you wish, as you want. Everything here is very well documented. For you to understand how do particles work in Cave Engine. Go ahead, read it, and you will understand everything. So I have all that here. all the details. And I'm expanding this. Oh, I also have, this is very good, editor here. So if I click here in editor tools, register example tab, you can see this is a very simple example on how to create a custom editor for you. So this is literally a new UI. This is created using Python with this code here. Very easy, very simple to understand. And I can have buttons that do stuff. I can have text here and all that. And of course, you want to use this to make complicated stuff, to create like a procedural level editor or whatever you can do here. Cave Engine supports this in Python, very easy. And of course, I have documentation about this also. I said that I wanted to show where is the enemy, so it's in the template. And what the heck is a template in Cave? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we do have a documentation about it. So I recommend you that for you to read. But basically, it's a reusable entity that you can create and place all over your game. And if you modify this reusable entity, all the instances of it will be modified, which is very good. And what is nice about this is that the template here, you can add it in Cave just like you would in a scene. So you can see the template have its own scene here, its own space, and can click here and add it and add, I don't know, a mesh on top. Very weird stuff going on here. And if I go back to my scene, let's go to another scene that actually have enemies, the third person. You can see that the third person, they all have this box because I added it. By the way, this is very nice. Templates can have shared variables. For example, this circle here is the range of the motion of this enemy, and I can change here the patrol range. Can change the walk speed, and this is individual for each template. And by the way, before you ask, I can double click the enemy here to just edit this. This gizmo here, this indicator here, you can see I deleted the cube and it deleted to all the templates, the instances. This is like an API for you to draw stuff for debug purposes, like this line, this arrow, and all this. This is an API that you can access in Python. You can even execute stuff outside the game. This is how I am drawing this, by the way. If I click here, open the enemy, in the components here of the enemy, I have a Python code that do have an editor UI code in it, and it is basically getting the transform of the entity and adding a circle here. You can see it is a blue circle with 16 vertices, and it does have this position here and the radius of this patrol range, which is a variable that we were changing here. So very easy to do debug stuff in it. Now, by the way, before you ask, yes, you can edit using an external editor. Just go ahead here, file. Oh, by the way, the engine will do this for you by default, but if you want to make sure you have the up-to-date stubs, click here to set up stubs to project. The engine will create stub files for Visual Studio Code and all that, and this is very good. So if I go to File, Open Project in Explorer, it will open the project here, the folder for me, where I have all the files. And if I right-click here and open with code, for example, which is my personal editor, I was editing the scene, so it's all open here. But you can see I have Visual Studio Code, and I can open my my files. For example, third person. Let's open the Python script. You cannot modify or rename the files here. It will not gonna update the engine because the engine requires the asset file to be consistent and all that. So just make sure you are always updating the files, moving them around, or creating and deleting using the asset browser here. But once the asset is created, you're free to go ahead here and open and look at the code. And what is interesting, as I said about the stubs, is of course the content is inside source content. This is the content of your game, but here I have typings and I have the stubs. And this is a Python stuff with the entire game engine API. You can see every single function that the engine have for you, and most of those functions are documented. For example, what is open web link? You can see opens the given URL in the user's default web browser. So if you want to know how to have a button that opens, I don't know, your YouTube channel or something like that, well, Cave Engine do have cave.openWebLink, takes an URL as a parameter and does that for you. And of course, you have more complicated stuff. The camera, it does have the documentation for the camera and all that, and many stuff. And the reason why we do have this stub file is that I can, of course, give hints here. For example, the character, I'm saying that the character is a character component. And if I do self.character, you can see that Visual Studio is auto-completing for me, which is very nice, very handy. So let's understand what is the enable for this character. Takes no parameters and returns none. Okay, so this is how to enable the character. Good. I can go ahead and access something different in the engine. Let's try here. So something equals to cave, and then I click here, I type a dot, and the autocomplete will show you the entire API. So very easy. So let's try to get the events. Events, get events, great. So returns for me the events. And of course, I'll rename this to make more sense. And if I do av dot, you can see that I do have the documentation for this. So active, and I can keep doing this to find the exact same thing. And of course, if I control click, it will show you all the possible definitions, for example, the event type and all that. And it's easy for me to understand what is going on. If you want more details in the API, you can also go ahead. This is new in Cave 1.0, 1.1, sorry. Go to help and click here, Cave Engine Python API. It will open in your browser an API for the engine. So I am here with the API opened in my browser. It's good to mention that this API is not online. I really dislike software that requires online connection to work. So this is an offline file that is local to your Cave Engine API installation, so it will work. Now I am working on this. This is a bit 1% misleading because these icons here is from font awesome, and this is online, so it will require internet to display the icons, otherwise it will not gonna have the icons, and I believe the font also. But anyways, the important part of this, which is the actual text, works offline for you to understand. So if you want to see, well, what is the camera in Cave, we can go ahead in the API map, click here, and it will show camera related classes, and I have a class called camera. And you can see the documentation. The main camera class, everything has all camera instance. Please notice that this is not the same as the camera component. You can get the scenes component camera by calling scenes get camera method. So you can see here, there's documentation and examples. Let's go ahead to the component. Let me expand this. You can see that I have two classes. I will click here in the component. You can see base class for all Cave Engine components. All methods and variables available here are also available for you to use in your own custom Python component. So now you know that your custom Python component, it ranges from the component class, and you can see all the variables and methods. They are all documented here. You can also have explanation of the Cave Engine system of entity components. It's here. And this goes on and on and on. And of course, you can search for stuff. So if I go ahead to the top here, I can search for entity, and it will show the list of everything. For example, entity, what is entity template? Let's click here in the entity template, and it will scroll down to this, and I can see here that I do have the details for it. The entity template is not usually accessible using Python, so you can see it's a very simple class. There's not much going on. But of course, let's try to do something different. I randomly click. Let's click in the entity, which is more appropriate. So you can see here the entity that I search for. There's a huge explanation of what is the entity and the recursion and the parenting system. It explains everything. I do have the class entity and every single variable and method of this. It's here, it's explained, and this is always up to date, which is good. This is a generated file. Of course, the documentation, the text here I wrote for each function, but when I say it's generated, I mean the exact same API that I have access in Python is here. So this is good because it's never, oh, it's here in the documentation, but it's not accessible in the engine. This is not a thing. By the way, this API here in HTML is still a bit work in progress in a way that it misses one or other APIs. So if you compare this to the stubs here, the stubs does not miss anything. So stub is a one-on-one representation, very good, but you realize that something is missing. For example, this has editor method function is not in the API, but we have almost 3,000 functions, methods, classes, and variables documented here in the API. And I would say that this is about 98 or 99% of the entire engine API. So just some very specific stuff just like this. It's basically just this actually. Basically this is missing in the API, in this API. But it's here in the stubs anyways. And I even added comments so you understand how or what they do. So this is very good for you to study and understand, and this is precisely how I expect you to use the engine and understand everything that works, how everything works and all that, by reading this documentation, go ahead and reading the docs here in the demo projects, exploring, breaking the demo projects and all that, and trying to create your own stuff. This is very good to learn, very good strategy to do this. And I really recommend you doing even materials. Here you can see the common stuff. People tend to ignore this. Don't ignore, because for example, if I go to the test material, there's a README, and the README explains how materials works in Cave. So very useful. Then I even have links here. For example, you don't know what is Fisk-based handling. You don't know what is a normal map. No problem. You can see here, oops, I clicked somewhere else. Good luck. Good thing is that I have this back button, right? You can see here that I have normal map. And it's a link, and if I click, it goes to the Wikipedia page of normal mapping. So what is normal map? I'm very new. No problem, it is here. Anyways, so this is basically the how Cave Engine 1.0, 1.1.0, sorry, is shipped. And if you have any questions about it, let me know in the comments. And of course, join the Discord server in English. It's very easy to join the Discord. It is here, help join Discord in English worldwide, and this will go to the global Discord for Cave and for all the projects, so you can go ahead and join it. And if you are a patron, you also have an exclusive channel in this Discord, which is very good. So that's it for this video, folks. Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any questions or comments below. I see you in the next one. Bye.